Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Espresso Entrepreneur, connecting with different business owners on their journey and also kind of talking a little bit about our beverages of choices to help us get through our journey and our business path. So, Cheryl, I'm so excited to have you on as a guest today. I'm super, super excited because you have an amazing story to share with my audience. So, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on.
Of course. Well, I'll kind of let her kind of kick it off because we connected about a week ago or so, and I was just talking to her about her journey, and she has an amazing story, and especially inspiring other people. And I'll let her get into it, and then I'll explain exactly what I love about her story. So, Cheryl, why don't you kick us off and tell me a little bit about your journey and your story?
Yeah, so I'm picking up in the middle because we don't have all day. I actually was in animal rescue for about 12 years, volunteering, serving on boards, eventually working part-time and then working full-time. And amazing experience. It truly did get me out of a depression in my late 20s. Unfortunately, I kind of swung to the other side of the pendulum in my early 40s, and I had gotten to the point where I was working full time for the rescue. I was still running my own content writing business, so I still had clients. You don't make a lot of money in nonprofits, so I had to keep a roof over my head and food in the dog's bowl. And so I was working, 16-hour days at the rescue and then going, finishing that up by working on client work. And then you throw in my parents were getting older and needing more of my help. I was still volunteering with other organizations, still helping out my friends with everything. I was doing all the things. And it was probably late October when I just started to go downhill.
Mm.
I um, I was exhausted. I was crying constantly. I was very short with people, and I was actually I think I drank 3 nights in one week, and I don't do that like ever. So I knew something was going on, but I was kind of falling into this depression. And one day I was driving down the road. It was dusk, and the headlights started coming on, and I had this quick thought that if I just crossed over that center median, this could all be over in a second. And it was one of those moments that just, scared the life out of me. I didn't want to hurt myself. I certainly didn't want to hurt anybody else. And I didn't want to leave my parents and my animals without anyone. So I pulled over to the side of the road. I calmed myself down, and I kind of vowed in that moment that something big needed to change.
Mhm.
And it was just kind of this realization that my life was not okay as it was. And it took a little while, but I realized that my challenge was I didn't have any boundaries,
Mhm.
and I'd never had any boundaries. So it was just this, constant cycle of people pleasing and trying to be everything to everyone. And I hit my brick wall.
Mhm.
So that's kind of the background.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing, and especially in the way that you did. I think everyone can tell that, you're a storyteller to your core, and that was a really amazing way to kind of share with that. If you want to kind of share a little bit on what you did to kind of find your boundaries, because that's something I think even if maybe someone doesn't deal with it or it didn't get to the level maybe yours had, right? We all struggle with that at some level of like, oh, I didn't want to go out tonight, but my friend asked me, so I said yes.
Mhm.
And it can be something as small as that, or something as big as like, I need to stay in the office for 5 more hours because my boss told me to, but tonight is like my birthday or something, right? So I'm gonna say yes because I'm just programmed to say yes. So do you want to share a little bit on what you did to kind of overcome those?
Yeah. So it was mistakes right up until the very decision to go on this journey. But I had been, my friend asked me to step into the role of incoming president for our local speakers chapter. And I knew it wasn't a good idea. I knew it wasn't a good time. And I kept putting her off, and I kept, oh, look, talk to my husband or my fiance at the time. Let me go talk to this person. Let me do some soul searching, blah, blah, blah. And 3 weeks later, she was like, Sheryl, I gotta know. And that the people pleasing took over. And I was like, I don't want to lose my friend. I'll
Mm.
do it. The second I did, every cell in my body was like, what are you doing? It was just that realization of like, oh, danger, like I have done the wrong. I have chosen poorly. And it took another couple of weeks for this to really sink in and for me to finally speak to a mentor. And I said, I don't think I can do this.
Mhm.
Is it terrible if I step down? His answer was the best it could have been. It was, if you step down now, no, it's totally okay. If you wait the 9 months, you go through all the classes, through all the training, you step into that role, and then you decide no, then it's a problem because you've taken it away from someone else. He
Mhm.
goes, but right now you're not in a position to serve the chapter the way the chapter deserves to be served, and you're doing a disservice to yourself. And it was kind of what I needed to make that decision. So I was sitting on an airplane doing my thing, and my Kindle died. I was like, oh my God, I have to sit here and like listen to my own thoughts. This is horrific. But in that moment, I knew that this boundary issue was going to keep coming up if I didn't face it head on. And I couldn't be the only one that had this problem. So I actually outlined about 60-70% of my book because that's how I process. I'm a storyteller and a writer at heart. I outlined about 60% of the book on the airplane. And then I went home and I read everything I could. I talked to therapists, I talked to coaches, and I talked to women in my life that had really healthy boundaries. And they didn't start out that way. So I interviewed them, and all of this came together as the book. And once I published that, I did a coloring book to go with it. And I speak now. I go into organizations and nonprofits, and I do workshops, and I help people. I help people stop people pleasing, so that organizations don't lose good people, because I'm done. I'm out. I am broken when it comes to animal rescue. I donate, but that's as far as I can go because I know that's my boundary. And how many organizations lose really good people just because they burn out?
Mhm. Definitely. Well, thank you so much for sharing because, like I'm saying, like everyone deals with it on some level in their life. And I know I have, like with my teen years, I was, whatever I had to do. And I think something that really resonated with me that you said is that you felt compelled to say yes to being, the incoming president because you didn't want to lose a friendship. And I think that's definitely the mindset we all come from. It's like, if I don't do this one thing, is this person for like 10 plus years of my life, are they going to stop being my friend now? And usually the reality is no. And I say usually just because sometimes people are people, we can't control everything in our lives, right? But usually the answer is very much no. Like I have a really close friend and I was like, hey, do you want to come with me to a cat cafe? She's like, oh, I'll think about it. And I was like, okay, yeah, no worries. And she goes, I would like to go. She's like, but I don't like cats. And I'm like, then you don't have to come.
Yeah, it's not the
Like,
place for you.
I'm like, I love you and I want to spend time with you, but if you don't like cats,
Mhm,
we
mhm.
probably shouldn't go to a cat cafe. Let's do
Right.
something else that we can both enjoy. Because I don't want to make you go to a cat cafe if you don't like cats. And I think it's one of those things where we're really great friends. We love spending time together. But me as someone who's asking her, and I love cats, and I would love to go to a cat cafe. I don't want to force my friend to do something she doesn't like just to spend time with her. I wouldn't like that, and vice versa. So I think it's one of those things that I'm just so happy that we're more able to have these discussions. Because not that I've necessarily been in the business world that long, but I know like when I was a kid, boundaries was never a word like at all. Like my parents never
Yes.
used it, any adult in my life never used it, and I've been surrounded by business people my whole life. And it was never a word, and I'm so happy that it is now. And that we're able to talk about it, and that this new incoming business owner generation, or just anyone and anything, we're having the vocabulary to really make our lives the best it can be and really enforce more healthy boundaries and just in general mental well-being. And I think that's amazing. Do you want to share a little bit about your coloring book? Because you said that it was one of the most like the proudest thing you've ever done, which I think is beautiful and amazing. And I love
It,
coloring books.
so there we go. So it's
Yeah.
always confused with the reverse.
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny. I was on a TV show promoting my book the week it came out, and the host, who happens to be a friend of mine, he said, "What's next?" And I'm just thinking about it, and I was like, "I'm gonna do a coloring book." And he just stared at me and said, Are you an artist?" I'm like, "I'm not." Because how are you gonna do it? And I was like, "I don't know, but it'll be out by Christmas." And it's probably one of the first times in my life that I've ever said, like, I'm going to do something. I have absolutely no idea how I'm going to do it. It's going to be ready by this date. And it was like, I did it. I figured it out. And God bless Canva, and YouTube tutorials and all the things.
1000%.
Oh my goodness. But I wanted to create something that was repetition. And
Mm,
so much of boundary setting is saying no again. It's not just the first time, it's the sticking to your guns, like holding your ground, whatever, however you want to put that. And it's reinforcing those messages of, to begin with, you have the right to set boundaries.
mhm.
Just like you were saying, so many of us were not brought up in a household that taught, discussed, or some allowed
Yeah,
boundaries. It was just, you're the child, you're going to do whatever I tell you to do, and your opinion means absolutely nothing.
right.
And we need to get over that. We need to embrace the fact, like, no, 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 you have the right to have needs. You have the right to express those needs, to have those needs met. And that's what the coloring book is about. It's kind of mandala style, and it's quotes from the book. So while you're
Amazing.
coloring, you're
Yeah,
looking at this line, and you're like, oh, I have the right to have needs, and you're
yeah.
coloring, you're absorbing. So it's really to help with that repetition and that internalizing those new beliefs.
Definitely. Have you ever seen the movie 27 Dresses?
I have. I
Yeah, I just
have.
watched that on the plane, and as you were talking about the repetition, I was
Mhm.
just thinking about that scene. If anyone hasn't seen the movie, it's a rom-com, with Katherine Heigl and James Marsden, and basically the whole thing is that she's like a people pleaser, right? And there's the scene where he's like, "Okay, we're gonna practice you having like we're gonna practice you saying no," and so he just kind of tries to like keep asking, and she's like, "No, no, no," and then he's like, "Okay." He's like, "Hey, can I have your drink?" And she goes, "Sure." She goes, "Wait." I was about to say no. And I was just thinking of that scene. And it's true, having that, saying no for the first time is amazing. But then when you get to the third time, you're like, "Wait, have I said no too many times?" The
Mhm.
answer is still no.
No.
You're allowed to continue saying no. So I was just thinking about that scene as I was listening to you talk. So that's really funny. Well, awesome. So if you want to share just a little bit on how people can learn more about what you're doing, about your speaking and then the book, and just how they can start applying it in their lives.
Yeah, so first off, my website is SherylGreenspeaks.com, and that's Cheryl with an S. When you're on the website, you'll find links to the book, you'll find links to my speaking information, and you'll also find a how to say no cheat sheet.
Mm.
And this is so important. And I have clients that literally have it, they printed it out, laminated it, and stuck it to their office wall, because setting a boundary, or at least finding out where your boundary lies, is a very different thing than actually communicating it.
Mm.
And the setting the boundary is actually the easy part. It's the coming up to another human being and saying, no, I will not do that. That we're shaking in our boots. And what I wanted to do is create really some sentence starters. And you go in, you're gonna have your own favorite go-tos, but it's really about the different ways that you can answer, and how to soften the blow.
Hmm.
how to communicate it so that you're not losing friends and burning
Exactly.
bridges.
Definitely. I love that you mentioned that too, because I think, I've met people and they have great boundaries, but they're not great at communicating it with you, and that can be hard as well. So, none of us ever want to hurt anyone's feelings, and we're just really looking out for ourselves. And then again, the mentor you were mentioning is, uh, it's fine if you say no right now, but if you go through all this process and then eventually you step down, it ends up affecting a lot more people than you initially wanted to. And that can happen sometimes, so just being soft with it and understanding of like, hey, I respect you as a person. It's just this is not something that I don't think will work for anyone right now. And I just want to be honest about that. So I think that's perfect. So I'll make sure I have all of Cheryl's links, Cheryl with an S, in the comments, in the description, in the show notes, so people can click, copy and paste, check out just a little bit easier. So, Cheryl, thank you so much for the time today. This was just an amazing conversation. This is probably one of my favorite topics. So, I appreciate you taking the time and kind of educating my audience a little bit on this.
Thank you.
Of course. And to everyone watching, I really appreciate you as well. And I will see you next time.